Watch out. Once again, we are not talking about football until next season. Okay, that is an off topic that will not be entertained. So thank you for coming here today, and I think you hopefully are impressed with what is going on here, using resources and technology to get the message out. You know, we are not going to allow people to violate our laws and commit crimes and hurt other individuals, and we're finding many, many ways to address it. And our investments in this Crime Analysis Center is one of our many ways, one of the many tools we have. And so I'm really proud of the work they're doing here, and I was glad we had a chance to showcase it to all of you who will cover it beautifully. Thank you.
Governor, you mentioned getting the court system back up and running. Obviously, right now, there's a situation with the Court of Appeals nominee for Chief Judge. What is going to happen next on that? What's the roadmap for you?
Well, the court system is running. I mean, what I'm talking about is a $3 billion system where literally trials are not being held for 2 years because of COVID. So I'm very focused on that. With respect to next steps, you know, it's been less than a week, and I have an opportunity to evaluate all my options.
I mean, even if you were to file a lawsuit and succeed, most analysis or senators will say that there aren't the votes to pass that. So why try to go the lawsuit route if you decide to, when it's pretty unlikely you'd get the votes?
Well, you're jumping ahead in your own analysis. You're making an assumption, which I have not stated to be factual, that we're going to go down a certain path, okay? I would recommend you don't do that, because you will all know everything you need to know in due process and due time. But as the governor, it is my prerogative to do what's best for the people of the state of New York after thoughtful analysis and consultation, and I assure you that is my guiding star, is to do what's best for the people of New York.
Is a lawsuit an option then, at this point for you?
Option, there's 1,000 options, I'm sure. I mean, I'm
lawsuit against the Senate, one of the
You're
options
saying-
that you're considering right now.
you're saying that is an option. I'm telling you, I'm looking at all options.
The Senate rejected your nominee in the Judiciary Committee last week, and you said that you're still looking at your options. How long should the state go without a chief judge, as you are analyzing your options, as opposed to, you know, accepting the Senate's recommendation and putting forth a new nominee for them to confirm?
Accepting a committee's recommendation.
So
You
then
might want to
how long
correct
should
the
the state go
record on
without a
how you
chief judge?
describe that. You're saying correct a committee's recommendation.
Then how long should this?
So what I would say is I do think that the senators were aware that there's a very lengthy process, one that got us to this point, because starting from square one, it has to go out to anybody in the state of New York who wants to qualify. They have to go through a lengthy screening process. Then there's an analysis by all the bar associations, you know, from New York City, New York State, Women's Bar, everybody. And then there has to be a recommendation from a commission that recommends down to 7. Then there's a timetable for the governor to select in that time frame. Then there's a time frame involved for the Senate to act. So I think that was also out there, that they knew that there would not be, you know, if they, you know, went a certain path after the Senate acts, that, you know, it's a lengthy process. But I'm focused on doing what's right for the people of the state in the space, and that's all I'm going to say on it, because there's no more elaboration required. I'm going to do what's best for the people of New York. Thank you.
Just very quickly, I mean, you don't accept that the full Senate acted, so therefore your nominee is still Justice LaSalle. You could withdraw his nomination right now and not go through the entire process and choose one of the other 6 highly qualified people from that original list. The Court of Appeals has not announced a vacancy. By all purposes, we're still in the same list of candidates that the commission had approved. So you could right now withdraw your nomination, say the Senate is being recalcitrant, it is not being cooperative, but I want to do what's best for the state and pick one of these other highly qualified people from this list that's still there. Why are you not doing that right now?
I chose the best person from a list of 7. Jimmy?
Do you believe that the Senate is in compliance with its obligations under the judiciary law with respect to Justice LaSalle's nomination?
I'll let others comment on that. I believe that the Senate is the Senate.
Okay.
That's real simple. Senate equals Senate.
And is it your belief that a vacancy currently exists on the Court of Appeals?
Yes.
Yes. You do believe there's a vacancy right now?
There's a nominee. The process has not been completed. So right now, until we get action, there will be a vacancy.
So my understanding of the process is that if the nominee is deemed rejected, then the Court of Appeals must communicate to the CJN to essentially put out a new call.
Clearly, that's another parallel process that is unfolding.
So going back to public safety real quick, yesterday Republican lawmakers said that they want for bail reform, they want to give judges discretion for all offenses, not just serious ones, and they also want to implement a bail review process. Is that something that you would be on board with?
I have spoken about the fundamental premise behind bail reform. I have supported because individuals accused of low-level crimes, petty crimes, should not have to be sitting in Rikers Island for 3 years awaiting their day in court. That is the injustice that the original bail reforms sought to go after. They went very far in sweeping all crimes in that category. Last year in the budget process, despite the fact that no one thought it would be done, we got it done, so many more crimes, especially gun crimes, were now back covered under bail eligibility, where the judge has the ability to require bail or remand, stepping back. What we're talking about now, which is a thoughtful, common-sense approach, is that serious crimes, the judge should have more discretion and to be able to consider more factors than simply whether or not the individual is likely to return to court when they're required to. So we are looking at the factors that judges should consider with respect to serious crimes. I think that's the proper balance.
Thank you. Governor, switching to the healthcare crisis now, we've been reporting on extremely long wait times here in the Capital Region, many of our emergency rooms. We're talking 24 hours, 30 hours, one person saying they waited 58 hours for care. We've had hundreds of comments on this from people expressing these concerns about inadequate care and not having fast access to care. We spoke with the Department of Health, and they touted your investments and plans for this 5-year sort of workforce initiative to beef up the workforce. But we spoke with Albany Med's CEO, and he said while he appreciates that and they would use the money wisely, they need help now. Are you aware of these wait times, and what can we do now?
I guess the question was, we have traveling nurses coming in from other states, to backfill positions that are vacant. They're very expensive, and it's a hard hit for the state when it's state nurses, and it's also hard for the localities. It is a crisis. I'm not saying it's not a crisis situation. We lost so many healthcare workers during the pandemic. People are exhausted. We lost people under those circumstances. A number died because they were exposed to COVID, and there's just a frustration with those who are on. I was involved in a nurses' strike in New York City. I heard from all the nurses how exhausting their work is, and they're still reeling from, the effects of seeing so many people in their care die because of the pandemic. It took an emotional toll, and I understand that. But the crisis that has unfolded now is the shortage of healthcare workers. I recognized it a year ago. We gave also retention bonuses. No one's ever done that before. $3,000 to say, we're not just talking about we owe you a debt of gratitude. We're actually going to pay a debt and give you more resources. We were told by their leadership that would be something that would show our support for them. So we're acknowledging the problem is real. What we put in place is a way to figure out a way to get more in the system. It's not going to solve it overnight. But this has got our full attention to find out ways that we can get more people, retirees, people from other states, just bring back more healthcare workers so those wait times evaporate. We're just not there yet. But I'm committed.
Governor, on the bail proposal that you have, there are a list of factors that judges can consider in the law right now. Domestic violence crimes, juvenile offenses, things of that nature. Is it your opinion that the least restrictive measure prevents them from considering those offenses, or is it just confusing?
That's a very thoughtful question, because we have an inconsistency in the law right now. You're absolutely right, because we did put in factors to consider: previous offenses, gun involved, violating an order of protection. We put that in last year in the budget as one more set of criteria that judges should consider. But as long as the language remains in this section of the code that says judges must use the least restrictive means to ensure they return to court, a judge now has a lot of discretion. Now, what we see is interesting. Judges upstate, by and large, and again, I shouldn't even say that because I have to, everyone wants data, but there are judges upstate who focus on those criteria, okay? Great. Judges in other parts of the state, downstate, other judges, they only look at, well, I'm bound by this. I have to follow this section of law. All I'm trying to do right now is remedy that inconsistency that exists in law. And by focusing on the serious offenses, I believe that we should be able to garner the support from people who want to protect individuals and repeat offenders who do the same thing over and over and over. If they can look at other criteria, I think this will make real progress. And so it is the inconsistency that exists in the law right now that you're talking about.
Governor, you were mentioning earlier that state police are having trouble hiring people. Now, some have speculated that anti-police sentiment has something to do with people not wanting to enter law enforcement. So with that in mind, what do you think about this proposal to repeal qualified immunity? State lawmakers are starting a new push today. Do you support it?
You know, we have a crisis in healthcare workers, trying to attract more teachers, and also an area you do not want to have a shortage is on our law enforcement, the ones who protect us, who keep order. And again, you can have the right balance of ensuring that people's rights are protected. We're not ever going to sacrifice individual rights, but also protecting life and property is critically important to us. So I'm going to continue focusing on changing the attitudes around our law enforcement. Again, people are the outliers, those who commit an act that is reprehensible and abuses their power. I don't care if they're in law enforcement, a teacher, or politician, anybody. There's consequences. But don't sweep the actions of a few in any profession to characterize the majority. And that's what's happened here. So we have to get at that mentality. I don't think it's pervasive. I think it's narrow. But let law enforcement know we respect them. We honor them. We want them to, join what is a noble profession. So yeah, that's what we're up against, is trying to change that. And that's an issue that, when people cross the line, someone crosses the line, there needs to be consequences. If they abuse their badge and harm someone, and there's evidence of an intentionality and all these other criteria, there have to be consequences, because otherwise you're maligning all the good ones who don't support that either. So I want to make sure that those protections remain in place. So those protections remain in place.
Do you oppose it?
I'm not going to give you a straight answer on that, because I'm going to say this. I don't support the repeal of that, no. I don't support the repeal of that. What I do support is stopping the denigration of people who take an oath to protect society. Again, they cross the line, you make an example, because communities need to know that they can trust law enforcement to not cross that line. That's important to me. And I'll happily call out anybody who does and say, you're shaming your profession, don't do that. But the vast majority are hardworking individuals who just deserve more respect than they've been getting in the last few years.
Okay, Josh, and then we gotta go.
Governor, are you satisfied with the rollout of discovery and pretrial money to district attorneys? And do you see any way to expedite those funds?
Yeah, I agree with that. And that's why we're actually adding more funding. If there's anything you want to add on that. Joe Popkin?